Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It is a Paramount presentation. I am Mike Casaza, joined by Chris Anderson. Chris, the fifth game of the season seems like as good a time as any to figure out who is going to travel for a road game with the team. This is a fun exercise we've been doing for years, just trying to figure out what 70 players the Mountaineers will take on a Big 12 road trip. They've already played on the road once this season. However, non-conference games, there's no limit on the size of your roster. And if you're the home team, there's no limit for the size of your roster. For some reason, they've stuck on the number 70. I haven't heard any type of groundswell for that to move, especially if you look at the roster cap that's coming. That 105. Maybe this should be a little bit higher now because I don't know, you're going to have probably more need and fewer players. If you're practicing with fewer players, you might have more injuries. You might need some more space on the travel roster. That is a conversation for another day. We're going to figure out which 70 players West Virginia makes the trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma with for Saturday's. Oh boy, Chris, this is a pretender contender game. You can really end Oklahoma State's season here, but it's quite possible Oklahoma State could really throw a wrench into just a number of plans for West Virginia too. I don't think West Virginia's done if they lose. Oklahoma State's finished. So there's certainly a survival aspect of the game on Saturday in T. Boone Pickens Stadium. 70 players. How do you want to do this? I have an idea. I think we should go through position by position offense with our absolutes. Pause, figure out how many we have on offense, do defense. How many we have on defense, do special teams. And then figure out if I have 8 left and you have 8 left, how do we figure out those spots? Because you can explain this. There's some science involved here. This seems like it's a pretty easy thing to do. It's actually not. It's kind of hard once you get to 66, 67 because you have, you know, 4 or 5 spots left and maybe 8 or 10 players you might use.
Yeah, as I say, let's be clear. This isn't the top 70 players. Yeah, sure, it's probably most of the top 70 players, but you get to the last handful of spots and it's, hey, do you really need that fifth tight end? Or do you want the second long snapper? Do you want a 12th offensive lineman? Or do you need that extra safety who can play on special teams a lot? That's where you start getting into it. That's where you're going to start seeing guys who you're like, wait, I didn't even know that guy was playing. If you're listeners, Mike and I know they're playing, but
Yeah.
it's like, hey, they are playing. They're just only playing on special teams, and you might be forgetting about them because they're only on coverage units. So, yeah, it gets tough at the end. I agree with you that the best way is probably like the, hey, here are the definites for this position. Now let's talk it out if there's anybody else you definitely have, um, because that's how I did it. That's how you did it. I'm sure that's how the coaches do it too. They fill it out with the guys they definitely have, and then they go, we got to fill in the rest. Who's on what special teams, units, and let's go. So I'm ready when you are.
I'm so glad you mentioned the 2 long snappers because if I remember, that might have been the first time we did this where you were furious, but then it also made perfect sense. And then people were coming at us like, I had no idea it was this intricate. Or like, why did you guys bring quarterback 4? Well, he signals in the plays.
Yep.
So if you don't have him, you're lost in the sideline. People are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So like, never mind. You figure out where you have depth and where you don't. And I think one position here is going to be pretty obvious that, oh my gosh, it's pretty thin. You have to make some exceptions to get people on the plane. And that's kind of the point here is you figure out, and even after 4 games, it's a little bit more illuminating too about what type of position West Virginia's roster is in with strength, experience, health. Pretty healthy at this point, minus one exception, which again, that'll probably come into the conversation here as we get going. But what do you say we
Can
get
I ask you
started
a
here?
question? Hold on. I got
Oh,
a question
sure,
for
go
you.
ahead.
Let's go with the start and finish here. And well, we'll go with the finish. Just a
Okay.
little sneak preview, a little taster. How many special teams players did you have? Hey, punters, kickers, long snappers. I'm not talking about, a guy who's plays safety but really only plays special teams. Let's talk
It
punters,
6.
kickers, kickoff. Okay, six.
Yeah,
Six,
but
six here and considered a seventh. I'm
oh,
you're you're soiling my mind with your special teams talk over the years. So just slowly converting to your belief system here. It's terrible.
yeah. I really thought hard about a 7 too. Something has happened and changed my mind, but we'll get there.
Okay, then this will kick us off with the first thing. Did you change your mind about a fourth quarterback because of the new um, play system, calling in the plays through the helmet communication system?
It was part of the calculus for sure, but Chris, they still signal in plays.
Okay.
I'm not sure how important that is, but like you still got to get a call to your line, a call to your receiver, and stuff like that. It seems to me, I just been watching game. I watched a lot of football this weekend, Chris. I don't get to do that very much, and just like the sideline reports, where a lot of that stuff is just the coach talking to the quarterback in between plays, and you got that 15-second conference you can have. And meanwhile, call the play in some other aspect. Don't use those 15 seconds to call the play. Use that 15 seconds for counseling purposes. I hadn't thought about that. And I wonder if that's happening at West Virginia. That might be a good question for a news conference, too, is like, what have you figured out about this? Because if you're just talking to your quarterback for 15 seconds, you got time to call on a play, too. And you could be doing that to a receiver, to an offensive lineman. I don't know. There's different ways to do it. But also, you got to have guys to warm up, play, just to warm up in the game. Like if you have one quarterback throwing the ball a ton of warm ups to receivers. Well, the receivers got to warm up, but you don't want Garrett Green gassing himself with warm ups too. Doesn't hurt to have an extra arm out there.
Yeah. I guess because when I went through and did my definites at each position, I said, here's my three. Probably going to have a four, but let me think about this because of the communication system, and then circle back and did put in a fourth. So do we even need to discuss the first three? I
No,
mean, Green, Markio, Burton, correct?
correct.
Now here's where I'm going to lean on you, being there in person, looking down on the field.
Yeah.
Who is for? Like who's the guy? I mean, I don't think it honestly matters where I'm not talking about the fourth, like the fourth best quarterback, who's the fourth quarterback that's going into the game. This is again about signals. Who's signaling in the plays? Because I don't know if it's Christ or Keen or I doubt it's Wilkins just because he's a true freshman. Who's signaling in the plays as a quarterback there?
I think it's Keen.
Okay.
I think it is. So that'd be important too. And again, why you couldn't teach Burton and Markio to do that, I don't know. Like they should be ready anyways. But I also think that there's a value to having like Wilkins there, even if he's not calling it, because he runs your scout team. If you're doing your walkthrough on Friday when you get there, you might want to have your scout team quarterback there one more time too. So that decision for your fourth quarterback is not a slam dunk.
Okay. So you have the same three. Do we want to circle back on the fourth or go ahead and divulge?
Let's circle back.
Okay.
All
Running
right.
back?
Let's do running back slash fullback, which is a hint here. Um, we're gonna put all of them into one bag. Is that okay?
Go for it.
All right. I have four:
Okay.
Donaldson,
Okay.
White, Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
and Colin McBee, who's a definite for me because they
Okay.
don't have a fullback, and you just don't know if something weird is going to happen. And this is going to kind of make up for another decision, I think, later on in my draft here. But like, he's not playing special teams, he's not playing offense. But I just think that they would much rather be caught with him than without him when it comes to a situation that they might need 1 yard, they might have to get a 2 point conversion in overtime, something might have to happen. They kind of think of him as a big running back more so than a fullback. I think that's the guy who gets a spot though.
So that was one of your definites. Do you have
Yeah,
can you have an extra? Do you have a fifth? Just let me know about that. Because I only have
as
three
a definite.
definites.
Not as a definite. I have four
Okay.
definites.
I have three definites, Donaldson, White, Anderson, and then I had one that we'll circle back on in the end, but it's different than yours. I'll say this. I had not gone the McBee route. I had not gone fullback route in my list. So
I mean, they
we
don't use
already
it.
yeah.
They don't use them, but let's get into this. How about this? All right. We'll go right to tight end.
Hmm.
Four definites.
I got four of you.
Okay.
And
Taylor.
one of them hasn't played yet, right? Like
Okay. Yeah. But that's a recent development too, right?
yeah.
Taylor,
Yeah.
Davis,
Hmm.
Jackson Marco,
Yep.
and we both had Greg Generos, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay. Reason being, Chris, and I said recent development. Why is that a recent development?
Because Neil Brown said he's the backup receiving tight end. I believe I can't remember how he phrased it, but he basically said Jen Ross is Cole Taylor's backup in these pass game sets or the passing tight end position, if you will.
So you have a two deep within a position too, because you have receiving tight end one, receiving tight end two, and then Traylon Davis and Samarco are much more alike than Traylon Davis and Jen Ross at this point. And Jen Ross is more like Taylor than Samarco or Davis is like Taylor. The reason I put McBee here is that if something goes wrong with Davis, you've got to have somebody who can do some fullback stuff. You can't abandon that part of it. And maybe it's Samarco, but you're going to need somebody that, like Davis does a bunch of fullback stuff. He might be attached, he might be in the backfield sometimes too, but just maybe they would feel more confident what they're doing, or if they have to like just change in the fly if they had a fullback in there. So that's one reason I got McBee, and I just think that he gives you some versatility there that you might not have. And honestly, he might not even be best at that. That would probably be like a pipe dream. Maybe you never get there, but that gives him a chance to do that. So we both have four definites.
Yeah.
Receiver.
Okay.
I have 9 definites.
I have 8 definites and a maybe. So, or a probably,
Okay.
or an in. I mean, I have a ninth one in. He's just one of my last 10 in. So
Okay. So
I
let's
have
go
8.
definites for you.
Okay.
All right. Justin Robinson,
Yep.
Hudson Clement,
Mm-hmm.
Jaden Bray,
Yep.
Traylon Ray.
Yep.
This might be your exception. I have Jarrell Williams.
No, I have him.
Okay, okay. Valuable special team player too.
Yep.
It's funny. I walk through the parent parking lot and like the Williamses are there, and there's always somebody saying, "Hey, man, he had a great rep on that kick." Like people, I've seen that twice now. Where people talk to Jarrell's family about how good he's been on special teams. Good. Uh, Rick Darius Farmer.
Yep.
I guess he's a
Give-
receiver. Rodney Gallagher.
Yeah, Gallagher and Fox rounded out my 8 that
CJ
I
Cole
had.
is one of their best special teams players.
I had him as in. He was just one of my last 10 of
Okay.
the 70. But yeah,
I
for your
had him as a
point,
definite.
special teams.
I have him as a
Yeah.
definite because he's on a couple units. I don't know exactly which ones, but he's there. He's like one of those. I don't know if they have a special teams captain. It's probably going to be Brinkman, I would guess, if you pick that. But he's done it for so long. He's just kind of created his niche, like respected player. Um, Plays a couple. I could figure out which ones here on the fly, but I had him in. He's not going to play receiver, but he can fill in a couple different special teams. And if he's not starting, he could back up too.
Yeah. I mean, again, the way I did it, I had 60 and then my last 10, I just color coded as my last 10 on, and he was one of
Mhm.
the last 10, but he was probably 61 right instead of 69. So he's in for me too.
Fair. You want to do offensive line?
Yeah, I got 10 definites, but again, we go beyond that. But I mean, it's standard 2 deep here. Uh, Yates and Livingston, Remach, Hubbard, Weedman, Cray, Malone, Milam, Bosley, Johnny Williams. So essentially the
11.
2 deep. And
I had
then,
11.
uh-huh,
Milam, Remach, Yates, Hubbard, Malone, Williams, Weedman, Livingston, Cray, Biggs, Bosley. Who did I have that you didn't have?
Biggs. I have Biggs as my, not, I mean, again, I don't want to say a maybe, but just one of my last 10 in
Okay,
is all.
you can do that.
All right. So
He's
how
been on
many
a
did
couple.
you have? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's just saying he's been on a couple. I think it's like the field goal block, field goal PAT. And again,
Yeah.
you could gain that up if you need to get a spot. You can make him stay home and figure out how to make it work.
No, I feel pretty comfortable with him being on this 70.
All right.
So you had how many on offense as definites?
20. Hold on. Probably
At
should have done this math
28,
already.
I think is what I had here.
24, 28. I have 31.
I had 28 of my top 60, and then again, 4 more to add on to it. So I had a total of 32 on offense. Who were your who were your maybes, or for me, part of my last 10 in?
So how we filled things out?
Yeah, on
Okay, I
offense.
added a quarterback, a running back, and a tight end.
Okay, I went quarterback, running back again. So mine was Keen at quarterback,
I
who
think I think there's an argument for Wilkins in the scout team thing. They don't want to play him, but I wonder. Like, I don't think it's that valuable. Like, if you're gonna walk through on Friday, maybe you do it before you leave. You don't have to worry about it. That's probably the better argument. But like, they're gonna, Chris, when they go to Cincinnati, they're gonna stop halfway and do their walkthrough. They're gonna bust to Cincinnati, stop halfway and do their walkthrough. You like to have your walkthrough quarterback do the scout team. I think it's a pretty interesting decision.
interesting. I honestly I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a good point. Biggs we already talked about. Cole we already talked about. As four of my last 10 in, so
All
they're on
right.
my list. And then the one I know we have different, or at least I think we have different, because you hadn't mentioned him yet. Clay Ash as my other running back.
All right. Yeah, so he definitely played special teams.
Yeah,
It's been updated now. He's in there. So that's a guy who's a true freshman, a walk-on who was here in the spring, and man, he thunders. Like he runs hard. He looks like a linebacker, a big safety out there, and he played special teams. And Chris, like Dunbar and Hubbard do not play special teams.
no,
And again, this is another reason why you might bring McBee because they trust him a little more. He's been around a little bit longer. If you get in a situation where you need a fourth quarterback, a fourth running back, man, maybe use McBee over Ash. I don't know what's the difference, but it's valuable. So I have Ash slash Hubbard slash Dunbar because they said that they were going to
oh
have
you
to figure
cheater.
out. I know, but I'm going to go Ash because the special teams thing,
Yeah,
and like Dunbar hasn't played but a couple snaps against Albany. Hubbard hasn't played. They don't play special teams. I think it's more likely that they're going to make sure all three of these guys redshirt and no one surpasses 4 games. It might just be that Ash is the first one who gets his 4 games gone through, or they prioritize his 4 games. They give him the first 4 games. So I have him. But I did have those three kind of like in the same boat because there's not a great difference between them. But Ash has created the difference because he does some special teams.
All right, so here, so I have 32 people on offense. How many do you have, including your maybes or your
All
last
right, so
guys
I
in?
I added Keen, I added Ash, I also added Will Dixon. There's no reason
Okay.
he can't redshirt. He's big enough to play. You could put him out there. That kind of I mentioned the McBee solution maybe, but if you have Dixon there, he's probably like a hybrid of the two. He's probably a bit of Taylor slash Generos and a bit of Davis slash Samarco. If you get in a spot where you need him, he could probably get you out of a game. That's okay. I would have him with me. So those are my three: Keen, Ash, and Dixon. That got me to what I'd say 31.
I think you're at 34, right?
31 to
Because you
34.
have
You're
you
right.
have two
Yes.
more you have two more people than me on
Yep.
offense, and it's
Correct.
McBee and Dixon. You have, I do not. Which I think trends with what how this has worked out in past years between you and I when we do this. I always tend to add in extra safeties for special teams or something, like a 10th safety or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So we feel good about offense. That's the only difference is
Yes.
McBee and Dixon you have, I do not. But we
Correct.
have the first 32, we have the same.
Yep.
All right. Defensive
Defense.
line.
Let's go defensive line. All right. I have 8 definites.
Sure. Yeah. We got again one of the guys is my last 10, but yeah,
Yeah. I don't even have a maybe. I had definites because man,
you
eight's
have
not a
to
big
get there.
number, Chris. Eight
No,
is
you
not a
have to
big
get to
number.
8.
Yeah. Martin,
Mm-hmm.
Moba, Jackson,
Yep.
Redwood,
Okay.
Gabriel,
Yep.
Russell,
Mm-hmm.
Kinsler,
Yeah.
Bartlett.
Same 8.
Okay. Linebacker.
Same. All right. Are you in? Okay. Let me differentiate. I know you're going to differentiate the spur slash bandit slash whatever we're calling it now, right?
Okay. How
Or
would
you
you
want to
like to do this?
include?
Because I have all three, so I could speak separately, or I could speak
Oh,
collectively too.
let's do it collectively then.
So we're talking linebacker plus spur plus spear.
Or no, not spear,
Okay.
not spear, not spear. Linebacker and spur. So really, well,
Nine
spur.
definite.
Okay, spur, Bradley, French, Simmons.
Definites. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Hmm.
So we're good there.
Yes.
Um, Crew linebackers, if you will. Lathan, Trotter, Cutter, and if healthy, Carrico,
Hmm.
which I'm assuming healthy now with the bye week.
Hmm.
Again, I think they kind of hinted at the injury that it probably was. Give it a couple weeks, should be back, I'm guessing. And so I had 8 definites, and then yeah, I had one more, but he was literally one of my last 2 or 3. So I have
All right.
between
I
the two
had
position, linebacker and spur. I mean,
I had 9 definites. Got the three Spurs,
okay.
Bradley, French, Simmons. My
Oh,
linebackers, I had
Visor. Sorry.
okay, yeah, okay, you didn't have him. Okay, I was gonna say that did not add up. Yeah, six. I have 6 definite linebackers. You have 5. I had the same 5: Lathan, Trotter, Cutter, Carrico, Visor, and I think Curtis Jones is gonna play. Chris, I think he's gonna play through his red shirt. He's 2 down already, and he's got 2 to go. But he's playing special teams, kind of getting like a little bit of a mention for how hard he runs down there too. Could be a red shirt. Could be a guy that they have in there if something happens. I don't think he's close to playing time in the field. And like, man, sometimes I wonder about this. Like, if you get to 4 games and you're not playing, do you just say, hey, man, put Tyler Kane in for my 6 reps on kickoff? Or do you really want to play and prove yourself? I don't know. We'll see. But right now he travels with me.
He was my baby. He was one of the
Okay.
last guys on my roster, so
Okay.
not off. Okay. Corner.
5 definites.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
And then
Okay.
5 total for me too.
Ooh. Okay. Here's where we're gonna be different.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably.
So yeah.
Because I'm remembering that they're gonna throw Gallagher back over there too.
Okay.
Say what you want, but they're gonna do that. Aiden Garnes,
Mm-hmm.
Garnett Hollis,
Yep.
Colby Spells, TJ Crandall, Dantes Fagan.
Yes.
5 definites for me.
Okay.
And
Can
you
I
have
make
five
a
definites
case
as
for?
well?
I have 5 definites, and then I have 2 guys that were again amongst my final 10.
Okay.
Um,
Safety slash spear.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 definites, and then 2 guys again among my final 10. But I
Yeah.
think a little closer to the front of that 10 than the back.
Similar to me. 5 definites, 2 possibilities. Who are your spears?
Let's see here. So Burks and Jennings, again, assuming Burks is healthy, which may or may not be the case.
Mhm.
And then the other definites I had were Wilson, Anthony Wilson, Jaheim Joseph, Carnu, and then I had Tagaloa Nelson as in and playing as one of my
Okay.
guys.
Okay. I have Burks and Jennings at Spear, and man, if Burks doesn't play, this really gets complicated. Who
Yeah.
knows? They probably got fortunate with the bye week for him, and certainly for Carrico too. Um, Burks and Jennings Spear. Safeties: Wilson, Joseph, and Kikora Tarnu. And then I have two. When I came back, I added two.
Okay. All right, well, before we get to special teams, let's go ahead and do that because I think the only things we need to talk about here are corner and safety with the two guys. Because I have two guys that were among my final 10 at corner and two at safety. And you said you got none at corner, but two at safety. So let's go ahead and talk about those guys. What do you have at safety since we
All
both
right,
have
so
two more to add?
I have 27 definites on defense.
Okay.
Okay. Adding a safety, I'm adding Avery Wilcox because he's a special teams
Yep.
player. Although he's not playing special teams really, I don't know if he's been hurt or what. He can play spear, and he knows both safety positions. And if the house is on fire, maybe he can help you out. And then I added Josiah Jackson. Chris, to be honest with you, this is the last addition on my roster. Like there's a guy here, but I put on that you'd be surprised, but I put him on before I put on Josiah Jackson. I can't condone going on the road with four safeties when one of them is Avery Wilcox. No offense to Avery Wilcox, but he just hasn't played a lot in his career. I'm not sure like he needs to be logging a ton of snaps. You got to have another option if you're going to end up with Avery Wilcox in the field. There's maybe a better answer out there right now, like an Israel Boyce, but Israel Boyce hasn't played at all yet. So if we're leaving on Friday, I feel a lot better. Wilcox and then probably Josiah Jackson, who, man, I don't know what's happened, but he was the starter when things started to get like formative on the depth chart. And I don't think he's played a rep of defense yet this year, Chris.
Yeah. So we had the same two there. I had Wilcox and
Okay.
Josiah Jackson as the extra two. But you didn't have Tagaloa Nelson at all,
I
right?
did not because I just haven't
Okay.
seen him do a lot. That's a guy they really want to do well. He's really athletic. I mean, not just because he can play basketball, but boy, he runs a whole lot and moves. It just looks different. But he got in the first two games, Chris. He hasn't played since.
Yeah.
So I kind of had a bias there a little bit in my head, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay. Cornerback, you cut it at 5. Hard stop at 5, right?
Yeah.
And then I added two more. And again, these were almost exclusively, well, yeah, were exclusively special teams with the potential for some future based on some comments that Brown made. And that's Keyshawn Robinson and Keon Washington. Again, Robinson's been on a couple special teams, a little bit, not much. And then Washington was a guy that Neil Brown said was like, hey, he might be a guy that just needs to play more. And this is becoming like this is just with Washington, and I just want to put a little pin in this for the future. Maybe not this year, but for those kind of watching his development, because he was a guy back in high school who showed up at camp. He was an ideal size for like a high major
Yeah.
defensive back, camped extremely well. And I remember like talking to capital P people, like, what this guy looks amazing. And they were like, hey, his grades are really bad. Like his high school, he might not be eligible. Well, West Virginia was interested, and they basically, offered, putting that in quotation marks, and said, "Hey, we want to watch you and watch your grades. Send us your grades. We'll keep track." Grades checked out. Offer became legit. He committed. That was it. So the talent was never in question there. And I think here we are again with this season, and not to divulge too much. Can't remember if you divulged this on the board or not, but he was one of the players that got hurt during the preseason that might have set some things back. And again, he he could be a guy that's just really talented, and it's just a matter of time before he starts breaking into maybe not too deep as a true freshman, but becomes a part of something here.
Yeah, he might be on the field or not for the preseason. Like he might
Yeah.
be playing there right now too. Also, I don't know. I doubt you're putting him on defense. I don't know if Robinson's a safety or corner. Same with Chris
Yeah.
Henry. Like Chris Henry's not in this
Excuse
conversation at
me, he
all,
was a
but
wide receiver to start, right? I think he lasted a week at wide receiver before getting moved over to defensive back. So
yeah. there's something there that they like about him, but they're going to get him on the field, and I think he's been dressing for he might have been on the pit roster. I'm not sure. The pit roster is pretty good with only 80 players. That was a weird number to me to go to pit with 80
Yeah.
players, but I mean they're only using about 55, 58 a game anyways too. All right, so and any other additions? I had one more addition.
No, so I had 32 on defense, and that I think I've covered everybody that had. Who else?
I added Tyler Kane, just a
Okay.
big guy who plays in special teams, and honestly, he might not even get into a game. I'm okay with that, but he could fill in a couple spots on special teams. He could play linebacker. He's not yet, but he could play linebacker in an absolute pinch. But they like him in different spots. Not enough to have him like as a one anywhere, but you can look at their charts they have. He's a backup here. He's like a backup on a bunch of special teams, and if you're he's my 69th player. So again, like Josiah Jackson was 70th. He was my 69th player, but that's the reason I had him was that man, just six didn't seem like a big number at linebacker when one is Curtis Jones, the other one's Caden Bizer. Just like to have a little bit more there. Three might not be three might be two in some regard there. That's okay, but just you have the bodies, that's fine. Special teams, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right,
If it goes six for six on this, it's gonna drive me crazy.
I'm very interested in your seventh. So I have Kays and Koshan.
Yeah.
Apparently that's how you say his name. Um, Straw and Bechtel,
Okay.
Brinkman and Moss.
Yep. The two deep for long snapper, kicker, and punter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now in the past, Chris, you had to add Grayson Malashevich,
Yep.
but Straw is your holder now, I believe. And I think Bechtel was the backup
Yeah.
holder.
Bechtel's I think is the backup too. Yeah.
Yeah. Bechtel can punt. Bechtel is also a long snapper. He won't be number two. He's probably not even number three because the freshman that they got from Ohio, I believe they like a little bit. Caden Slater. You might know more about him than I do. But he's there. He can travel. He does a couple things that helps. Straw can hold. That helps. I'm frankly not sure why a quarterback can't hold, but that's okay. So yeah, I just need six there. That's all.
Same six, and I did not put seven on there, but had down here on my little Excel spreadsheet for in consideration Nate Flower, right? Like,
Same.
I mean, he is what the second or third option as a kickoff guy. I know he's capable of punting. Um, I just at that I can't bring myself to put seven specialists on there, especially given some of the versatility from a few of these guys. Like Hayes is doing kickoffs, so you don't need a kickoff guy. Uh, Cochan, he can do a lot too. And like you already broke down Bechtel and his ability to kind of move to a couple different positions in emergency situations. So I think your extra spot there is better used elsewhere. So we
Agreed.
got the
But
same six.
Agreed, but man, if I'm in Lubbock and Hayes is shanking them out of bounds, and it's the 12th game, and I need to have that for something, like I'm thinking really hard about making a change of kicker. But like the way that Hayes has kicked the past game and a half, that's encouraging. So I thought about that. Like I'm not going to suffer fools here. Like if I have to get a guy who can put it in the end zone, the devil I know is getting it out of bounds or is getting it short. Try someone else. Bring someone else. At least have that threat in the sideline, that option in the sideline. But no, I did not go that far.
Mike, did you know that Twitter put an explicit filter on our video of me reading off the kickoffs the other day? It was
That
too adult.
should have been wrapped in plastic and behind the counter.
Um, all right, so I'm looking at this. That's our 70. We both did our math correctly. Good
Mm-hmm.
job to us. We have three differences on the
Yeah,
entire
interesting.
team.
Hmm.
Um, I leaned into more defensive backs for again almost exclusively for special teams purposes. Keyshawn Robinson, Keon Washington, Aiden Tagaloa Nelson. Those are the three I had that you did not. You went kind of the other way again for more. I don't want not special. I mean, maybe a little bit of special teams with Tyler Kane, but unique formations, unique situations with Colin McBee and Will Dixon. So those were the three. McBee, Dixon, and Kane were the three you had. I did not. And again, Robinson, Washington, and Tagaloa Nelson, I had. You did not. So
Yeah, and as you say this now, I can just see like Shadon Brown windmilling cornerbacks into the game. It's 28-10 in the second quarter, and he's like, enough. Garnes, no. Fagan, no. I don't even know who you are. No. Yeah, Washington, sure. Just I could see that being a better idea than Shadon being like, oh my God, it's 28-10. What is Tyler Kane doing here? Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, I guess. But I also just think that those five, that's two deeps. That should be enough. We didn't mention the other Jackson, Jordan Jackson,
Yeah.
as a possibility too. So there's those young guys, Chris. I mean, they might have answers eventually. I'm not sure right now. We'll see. Any other takeaways? Like I realized the Vesterinen thing is a big deal because that keeps you from having three lines of three, really. Like you're having to have Burlitz, who is probably just a guy, but he can do some things. If you need to get out of a game again, he might be able to help you. I doubt he's giving you stats or a lot of snaps, but you feel a lot better with him with Vesterinen in there. And then yeah, Carrico hurts your special teams, gives you energetic snaps, especially against the run. He can cover a little bit too. Like I was surprised to see him run around and covering when their linebackers haven't been great at that. They'd like to have him back. Burks is a huge deal, but that would be any season too, I think. Maybe he's not great, but he knows what he's doing, and he's a quality player at a key spot. Otherwise, they're pretty healthy and like just they're not blessed to death. They're not like paper thin either in a lot of spots either. Defensive line is probably the closest.
Yeah, I had two thoughts. And the first one, like specific to a position, was my God, defensive line. Like to your point, was like, man, with Vistarin out, I'm looking at true freshmen and walk-ons at like 5, 6, and 7, or 6, 7, and 8, whatever it is here. Like this is not good, especially when coaches are talking all the time about wanting to run 8 out there. And I mean, honestly, you cannot travel with less than 8 or fewer than 8. You can't. Period. And that's a tough 6, 7, and 8. And not that they've been bad. They haven't. In the limited snaps they've been out there, they've been fine. But that's probably not an ideal scenario for that position. That was my first thought position wise. Overall, it was a little bit of a funny feeling because we've gone over this before. This is the first time in a long time, long time that West Virginia has been at the scholarship cap. I mean, they were literally days before fall camp started having to not forcing, but guys were medically retiring just to get down to 85. Yet I still feel like it was harder for me to get to 70 this year than it might have been in previous years. Like I don't know if 65, 66, etc. are as strong this year as in previous years. And I don't know if that's I don't recency bias because of the slow start to the season, or if maybe the walk-ons that were around previously were actually pretty strong. Like they might not have been on scholarships, but there's a really strong walk-on program at West Virginia for years now. And that really kind of shored up those final 10 spots on this team. But again, it just felt to me as I was doing this exercise that say 66 through 70 were not as strong as I think in the past couple of years, despite the fact that West Virginia is at the scholarship cap for the first time in a long time.
Interesting. Yeah. I realize that they're not using just like roster spots on special teams as much anymore too. And that wasn't like an epidemic, but you got a lot of regulars on special teams now too. You're not pulling guys in like Tyler Evans, for example, is a guy who would have made this in the past, but he didn't make it here because he doesn't play offense or special teams because they're using other guys who are like receivers slash cornerbacks or even running backs on some special teams. And you don't see that a lot anymore. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but if your best players are on the field more, you should be in a better situation too. Chris, can I read you some numbers and you tell me what you think here? Ready? 92,
Mm-hmm.
82, 88, 95, 92, 91. Those are the temperatures in Stillwater this week.
Oh god.
So depth and Ollie Gordon are probably concerns because uh, I'm familiar with Alan Bowman's work. I'm also familiar with Ollie Gordon's work. I know that they're probably only going to have 8 or 9, maybe defensive linemen that travel. I'm that is just that's a fourth quarter game to me. And if it's 91 degrees, 92 degrees, it's going to be in pads on the field, Chris. You know this 10, 12, 15 degrees warmer. That's going to be that's a conditioning game right there. That's a Mike Joseph special.
Real quick tidbit for you, based off your comment just a minute ago. These are the 10 most special team snaps for West Virginia, not counting an actual kicker or punter
No, you did the
or
work here. I
players.
just kind of hypothesized.
Nope, you're 100% right. I mean, Caden Beiser's number one. And granted, he's not playing a lot on regular defense, but he's number one. Number two, Ben Cutter, very involved. Aiden Garnes, Trey Lathan, Ty French, Jarrell Williams, Garnett Hollis, Sean Martin, Traylon Ray, Jaden Bray, and Anthony Wilson.
It's all
And if you
guys.
want to, Like these are out of those 10 guys, what, 8 of them are starters or playing quite a bit of snaps every single game on defense. So to your point, you're 100% right. Like these are more regulars on special teams than maybe in years past.
We're like one spring away from, I told Jarrell Williams, receiver will help him get to the NFL. He's so good at special teams that receiver will help him get to the NFL. We're like
Yeah.
one spring away. I can feel it in my bones.
Okay.
Any other takeaways from this, Chris?
Yeah, that's it.
Feels like they're in a good spot, you know? Again, not bloated with like decisions and like fringe guys. A larger core than I think I probably realized. Like when I got to 64 after the first round, I was like, holy cow. And again, there weren't a lot of questions about those 64. Like I felt pretty good about that. And again, we only have to add six. That's a pretty good sign there too. So again, roster's supposed to be healthy. And like you said, first time in a long time, they're 85. And this is kind of the proof of that too. And you could do some things with it. And they've been, knock on wood, we'll know more when we talk to Neil Brown today, but they've been kind of fortunate with injuries and you see what happens there. So we'll figure it out. Up on the site this week, Chris, game Saturday, Oklahoma State, plenty between then and now though.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be answering questions. We didn't do a mailbag this week for the podcast, but I did post for a couple questions for 3-minute videos. And of course, I think 15, 20 questions came in. So maybe there'll be a written mailbag answer session going as well. Some recruiting updates. Late 2025 offer is making a decision this week for football. A 2025 offer for basketball is making a decision this week. Um, yeah, things are picking up on the recruiting trail. Football and basketball. We'll have that. We'll have previews of the upcoming game, all the regular stuff as well.
Can't wait. Optics cool. Football's cool. Let's get back to work then, I guess. Until then, I'm Mike Casaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.